Hello, everyone. Welcome to another wonderful edition here of Level Up Mental Health. I'm Swizz, here ready to take you another journey through a few skills. Sorry, just had to make sure it seemed off centered, but I'm here now in center and ready to go. We got a good overview here, good topics to review here tonight. For those that are watching through the Twitch stream, thank you. For those that are watching through YouTube, this will be the first video here that will be shown and uploaded. So, what we'll be talking about here is going to be related to unhealthy coping skills and being aware of what unhealthy coping skills are. So, before we kind of look at the worksheet here, one thing of note is obviously, we can identify what is a coping skill, what is a positive coping skill or appropriate coping skill, and what is an inappropriate coping skill. For inappropriate coping skills, we could do things that are obviously may impact functioning. Substance usage can be harmful to yourself or to other people. Can damage relationships, things of that nature. Where you feel it just really just it may be preventing that success that we're looking for, right? So the goal is to develop those appropriate coping skills, things such as exercise or mindfulness, breathing, doing a hobby, things of that nature, all relate to utilizing those healthy coping skills that we're trying to develop, right? So the goal here is to recognize when we feel we are trying to, or if we're using a coping skill that may be unhealthy, right? And that's where that awareness comes in. Now, what's important to understand is obviously this can't be done, as we've kind of referenced a few times, that DBT scale of emotional intensity. This cannot be done if you're experiencing a crisis, okay? So you need to be below about that 7 if we're looking at that DBT scale of emotional intensity. If you don't know what that is, definitely, just do a quick Google search. I have some other videos on it as well. It's a great way to kind of break down. I might even just do a separate video for what that is to reference that. But the main goal there, again, is just to be able to reduce that intensity so then we're able to have that kind of mindfulness, self-reflection opportunities, right? Because if we're experiencing an intense crisis, we're calling 911, we're in an emergency, we're not going to be able to think logically like that. If this even is reference to the triune brain kind of video we talked about. Again, that theory stating how our brain kind of goes into that fight or flight mode during a particular crisis, right? So being able to be aware of if you can't use that reflection skills because probably we're in that crisis. So let's take a look at the worksheet. Let's see what we got here, and then we'll go from there. All right. So here we are at the self-awareness into unhealthy coping. Again, the goal here is to help bring that awareness into ourselves, right? And I always recommend being able to write things down because again, what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring that thought that may be repeating or consistent that is developed in your mind and to put it on paper. And when you're allowed to just bring it in that physical space, it allows you to challenge it. And the more you're able to kind of take a look and challenge that thought, it allows yourself to generate other possibilities. And that's where these worksheets come in place here, especially for this one here too. So again, the goal is to bring awareness for these unhealthy coping mechanisms and automatic coping. So this little worksheet here walks through a few things, being able to think about, okay, so let's say if the unhealthy coping skill was drinking, it was because of the feeling of being lonely, right? And that's the ultimate goal that we're trying to get. So if you're feeling some type of way, being able to recognize, okay, what was the behavioral response to that? So I drank because I felt lonely, right? So obviously, you continue to do the self-reflection here, additional things you've done in the past to cope with emotion and behavior. And what's interesting about that is if you can identify, let's say, that feeling of loneliness, is there anything else that you can identify that was a coping mechanism? And you can identify whether if it's a positive or appropriate or an inappropriate coping skill and see kind of where that translates to where you are now, right? some of your automatic coping skills. So this could be things like isolation or withdrawal or maybe just kind of self-destruction in that sense, right? Being able to kind of recognize what these are too is key. Now, what's interesting about that is, you may think like, well, how do these develop, right? And a lot of that is just that reinforced behavior. So if it had happened to help you remove that uncomfortable feeling in yourself, it's going to be reinforced, and then it becomes automatic when it happens over and over and over again, right? So if you feel isolation helps you remove that particular feeling of whether if you're uncomfortable or sadness or lonely, whatever it is, right? Or guilt, whatever it may be, and you go to that particular behavior and it happens again and again and again, that becomes your automatic coping skill, right? And obviously, as we're all aware, the more things are kind of conditioned, it makes it harder for you to be able to break that conditioning, right? So, work to identify your automatic coping skills is going to be key here. And the last area here is a kind of a fun one, is an A to Z coping skill. So if you feel you have a hard time of trying to name particular coping skills, the goal is to be able to really just kind of break it down, okay? So the more that you're able to do those things of, let's say, let's say you go through the list here of what A to B is, and you're able to do that, it really brings a good kind of marking for that too, okay? So the more that you're able to really just recognize, okay, so what are my coping skills? What am I trying to do here? Is key, okay? And the more that we're able to really identify, okay, what are my A to Z coping skills here? For example, just to kind of to highlight it, the more we'll be able to really identify kind of what it is that we're trying to do here, right? So like I said, being able to kind of say, okay, so if I don't know, let's say A is being adventurous, right? Something like that. B is baking. C is we'll say cooking. I know we're in the food things, but it helps you be able to kind of identify what is something you could do. So then going forward, you can try to use one of those coping skills if you're feeling that type of way. Okay? So that's the goal for A to Z coping skills. That's what we're trying to do there. And hopefully it's something that's helpful. I know this is a pretty short video. But again, what's important to understand is recognize what is the unhealthy coping skills that you're doing. And if you feel you're able to challenge it by ensuring that you are not in a crisis, it allows to have that reflection that is needed to really challenge those thoughts, right? And to think about, okay, what is the reason I am going to be coping with this? Okay? So, hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe. Got a whole slew of other videos there. If you're on Twitch, I'll see you in a bit here. Thanks.